Hello, everybody. Welcome back. A special bonus edition of the Hoots Podcast. Recording this live on a Thursday. It's January 28th, 2021. My, oh my, this year's gone by fast, and we just came out of a cesspool of years, so think about that. Welcome to the program, everybody. It's yours truly, Joshy. Josh Lopez. You can follow me on Twitter at the Hoots Podcast. Hoots Podcast, for those who are watching for the first time, is a brotherhood podcast about pro wrestling, also about life and making this a positive mental escape for people that are dealing through stuff throughout the week. So hope you guys are being healthy, in good spirits, despite everything going around in the country today. I got such a bonus episode. Like I said, I'm joined by a good friend of mine. This is the first time we're actually sharing a mic with each other, so this is going to be a lot of fun. His name is Andrew Baydala. He's from the SNE Network. Popular on-air personality. I've been fond of your work over the last year or so, my friend, and we've been interacting with each other for the last couple of months or so. And so I'm glad we're able to do this. And boy, do we got a lot of time. But how are you doing today?
I'm all right, man. Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. I'll be honest with you. Your transcripts are what I use on air when I'm not live immediately following a show because they're so damn detailed. And I mean, realistically, you take all the homework out. For me, obviously, I have my legal pad, which I take everywhere with me. And but I mean, man, oh man, those transcripts on your site are fantastic.
I really appreciate that. That's the goal of the website, to be a point of reference. A lot, especially Wednesday nights, it's hard for me to do it live transcripts. I'll tell you, picture is a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways when it comes to making a transcript, because I want to be as up to date. Like, pay-per-views are fine. I'll cover them live. But when it comes to like a television show, the flow can throw me off. Some of the matches and the sequences.
You watch a lot of wrestling.
I watch too much wrestling. I watch too much wrestling.
Yeah. I can see. And it's good, though. You know, the industry needs somebody like you who's not going to give a unbiased or they're going to or a biased opinion on something and they're going to crap on everything. It's very, level. It's very, very good. And it's so detailed. I mean, you could go to your Bleacher Reports and all that other stuff and see the live stuff, but they're not as detailed as your site is. Fantastic. Anybody who's in the industry that wants to do something that's not immediately following a program, I suggest you check out Joshy's site.
You guys go check it out at ProWrestlingTranscriptions.com right now, bookmark it right now. I get around 14 shows a week. That's added the content with New Japan because they do a lot of events and tours and stuff. So I get around, 50 hours a week of wrestling coverage. I never thought that pro wrestling would allow me to have a living and have my own apartment, but hard work pays off at the end.
Absolutely, man. You should tell that story every single day, because a lot of people get into the wrestling media landscape and they just want to bash something or they have their own agenda. There's some few good ones out there. Sean Ross Sapp, my buddy David Hero. There's a lot of good, Damian Nelson. There's a lot of good people out there. You're one of them, and just continue your hard work. I mean, look, it's paying off, right?
Yes, sir, my man. Let's get to know you a little bit better for my audience. Like I said, you're from the SNE Network. Tell us a little bit about that. And I know you had other projects that you worked on the side as well. Just let us know, who is Andrew Baydala?
So I'm a kid who grew up Long Island, New York. Fell in love with wrestling a long time ago. WrestleMania 11 and then 12 kind of set it off. Moved to Minnesota about, I want to say 9 years ago. Did a lot of work here. And now SNE was something that was brought to me. They wanted me to be the on-air personality, the host. They saw my work with PWR, Pro Wrestling Report, which was David Hero and Damian Nelson. And we just cover everything. Professional wrestling, both WWE and AEW. I watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and I watch a little bit of Impact, but it's really tough to do all that. Plus, I have 3 kids here, a wife. And then I have the NHL and the NFL and the MLB that we do. And we did the NBA for a little bit. Don't know if we're going to venture back in that. That's up to the powers that be. But yeah, I'm on the air 5-6 days a week at times. So, but SNE is everything that encompasses sports and entertainment. It's sports news and entertainment. Obviously a very wrestling heavy, but our hockey stuff's gaining traction. And I do a lot of football betting and all that other stuff. So it's a passion of mine. So I love it.
We got a couple of hustlers on air right now. How about that, folks? I think you do as much podcasts as I do articles in the week.
There you go.
you were just mentioning a good friend of mine, super friend himself, Mr. David Hero. Tell us about the show that you do specifically with him during the week.
Yeah, it's called Thursday Night Mania. We used to call it Saturday Morning Mania. David worked into his contract that he wanted to have it Thursday, so we went with that. And it's a great, me and him, he's one of my closest friends in the industry. I love that guy to death. Nothing I wouldn't do for him. We obviously play the on-air where, he's the yin to my yang, and et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a great show. We recap AEW, WWE NXT, and WWE Raw because we're live before SmackDown airs. I just have a good time. It's me shooting the shit with my buddy for an hour, talking about wrestling.
You can't go wrong with that. Let me ask you this, Andrew. For you, let's take the content creator to the side for a moment. Let's talk about the fan. How you can measure the temperature of pro wrestling in 2021 in the coverage of it. Do you feel like it's taken away from your enjoyment of the industry, or kind of similar to what it's been over the last 5 to 10 years?
So when I got into covering professional wrestling, which I did, this started in, May of 2020. There were times where I was like, I would just like to get off or watch the pay-per-view and go to bed, or watch Monday Night Raw and go to sleep. There were times where it's draining, especially a 3-hour program on Monday night. But I just felt like I owed it to the audience who were sticking with us and wanted to hear our opinions to get up and go do a show. My enjoyment of professional wrestling has never dwindled. I still enjoy the big shows, but I will say that I was a DVR of NXT, a DVR of SmackDown, and I would watch Raw live. But there were some times where, I'm just going to be flat out honest. At, the third hour, I would kind of maybe doze off. It's brutal at times. But now with SNE and the loyal fans that literally watch our programming on Facebook, we get over 4,000 views throughout the week. So I feel like I owe it to them to get up on, the network and do what I'm supposed to do. And that's cover professional wrestling, because at the end of the day, that's all that it is. It's me talking about something that I grew up watching and continue to watch.
I've been part of the wrestling media for 7 years. Actually, I put it out on Twitter yesterday that my first Raw article that I covered was the night that Punk quit.
I was just going to say you and CM Punk.
Yes. My hometown idol quit the first day I was doing the article. Life is weird in some ways. But, during that time period, I realized that no matter how I feel about certain angles or whatever happens booking wise, I think the ultimate thing that comes to my mind with wrestling, especially now, I'm trying to learn something new every single week. What to do and what not to do myself. Honestly, I started my own wrestling announcing school with the website, if you want to look at it that way, because there's not a professional school for announcers or people that want to do play-by-play. I always said I wanted to be 2 things in my life, Andrew. I wanted to be either the next Jim Ross or Glenn Fry for the Eagles.
Okay. All right.
2 things I wanted to be in my life. And it's okay, I did an announcing seminar one time with Kevin Harvey, who was behind the Rise promotion that's kind of affiliate with Shimmer.
Okay. Yep.
He was telling me, this is 2013, I was going to broadcasting school at the time, and he was telling me to you have the right energy, but it's also make sure you understand the sequences behind the moves and how the flow of a match is going. And I took that as a challenge, and I really applied to what I do today, because I think, to me, the ultimate story in pro wrestling is inside of that.
Yeah,
ring.
Absolutely. You're 100% spot on. And that's why I got tired of people when I'd go to the bar, or when we were at a hotel bar for the events. I got tired of listening to people, well, you don't understand because you're never in the ring. You never train. So I said, screw it. I'm going to train. And that's what I did with Ken Anderson, his school right here in Minnesota. Him, and it was Sean Daivari at the time. Aria Daivari's there right now. Molly Holly was there, and his wonderful wife, Anastasia. But that being Ken's, I needed to do that because I got tired of not knowing. I'm the same way you are. all right, I haven't taken a bump. Let me see what it's like. Haven't run the ropes. Let me see what it's like. I did that. I did it for about 6 months, 7 months. And then we had my wife got pregnant with twins, and I had to put that all on pause. And did I ever think I was going to be a professional wrestler? Probably not. I mean, I'm 6'3". I could easily put on some weight, but it's just at the end of the day, I wanted to know what it's like, and I didn't want to be one of those outsiders who if you ever watch any of my stuff, and I watch yours as well, so I know you don't do it either. I'm never sitting back and being like, oh, AJ Styles is too slow in the ring. Who the hell am I to tell the guy who is the best, or he needs to slow down or something like that? The people who critique that stuff need to find a new hobby. Quick.
Yeah, big time. I also am kind of sick and tired that people act like they're responsible for a booking decision. Let's bring this topical here because we're talking about the coverage, right? Let's talk about the Peacock move. And I think this is very revealing. This week's news hit of the network switching to Peacock in March 18th is more of a testament that booking has little to zero impact on business.
Yep.
Whether you want to admit it or not. I was listening to the After the Bell podcast for I called you today with Corey Graves, and he was talking about it with Vic Joseph.
Vic?
Yeah. And they were mentioning that this could potentially appeal to lapsed fans.
Absolutely. And before you get to your point with Vic and Corey, those two are good friends in real life, and their show is that After the Bell is highly entertaining. If anybody from WWE is watching, put those two on a podcast every day of the week. Go ahead.
Put them in the booth.
Yeah.
In the booth. They're talking about last fans, and I want to get your thoughts on this because in my opinion, just from observing, I had experience with WrestleZone as a result guy. I used to work with Brian Fritz, who used to do the Between the Ropes stuff in Orlando Sentinel. And Steven Muhausen, who's a MMA reporter from Sporting News. He was one of my teachers at the Illinois Media School.
Okay.
And they told me right off the bat in the beginning when I first started in this world that we live in of wrestling media that more times than not, people are going to be more fixated on the behind the scenes.
Oh, God. Yeah.
What the overall show is. Now that I'm into this 7 years in, I feel like even more to the detriment of the overall industry that there's too much of an emphasis on the booking decision. What's your thoughts on it? Give me a pro and a con about the coverage when it comes to booking, especially for people who've never been responsible for booking a wrestling show.
Well, I won't sit back and pretend that I've booked a wrestling show because I haven't, but a close friend of mine does. And what I will say is that the fixation on everybody knowing what happens behind the scenes or what's going to happen, you could blame the Pulse and the people who want it because realistically, whether it be Fightful or whether it be SNE or whether it be any of these major conglomerates, Wrestling Inc., for what it sells. So that's what people want. Now, I don't divulge spoilers. I don't have an account that says, in 6 days, CM Punk's going to return or something like that. I have my confirmations or my sources. We don't do that because realistically, we're fans of professional wrestling and sports entertainment, and that at times ruins it. But I understand there's a marketplace for it because a lot of people clamor for it. So that's why everybody else runs with it. Do I think it's a problem? Yeah, but I don't think it'll ever be avoided because it's just part of the landscape now. Do I think that booking decisions have a big effect on the overall bigger picture of business? No, because look at what they did. They tried out Bill Goldberg, and Bill Goldberg and Drew McIntyre are going to have a match at the Royal Rumble, which people are up in arms about. Right. But realistically, that casual fan, a buddy of mine who hasn't watched in 3 years, is like, Goldberg's fighting? All right, I'm going to check it out. It's free. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
I saw that you also have an NXT review show that you do with a good friend of mine, Josh Eisenberg, widely known from his chair shot reality days. I haven't seen Josh in a while. Tell him I said hello.
I will.
All right. You guys do an NXT show. Obviously, you got this big Wednesday Night War. We're bringing back the 90s and late 2000s again, right? I want to get your thoughts on that and tell me from your point of view, how's the viewing experience from AEW compared to NXT?
So I'll say that I just finished AEW's episode this week or last night. I watched it this morning while I was getting my morning workout in, and the shows are completely different. And people are like, nah, they're not. They're completely different. This is going to sound terrible, but I enjoy covering NXT more than I enjoy covering AEW. Now, I have a lot of friends who work for AEW. I hope that they do well, but I just think that AEW at times is I don't know. The flow at times is very off. They've had some really good shows. They'll never lose these Wednesday night wars to NXT because realistically their star power is far greater than NXT in my opinion. So I don't think they'll ever lose the wars, and they'll never lose that demo because they're not. And AEW is going to crush NXT in that 18-49 demo. I'm not really hung up on ratings as much as the other people are in this industry, just because, like we talked about, I think YouTube in the next 3 to 4 years, if you go look at the views, the 3 million, the 4 million, the 5 million views, who knows what type of TV contracts YouTube TV is going to pass out to have exclusive content. We don't know. How people consume their content is completely different now than it was decades ago. I don't think there's a war. I don't think there'll ever be a war. I enjoy covering NXT because I think it flows so damn good. And I think that's because the people in charge are Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Brian James. So
those who are familiar with my podcasts and my transfer site knows where I stand with AEW. And I think it comes from a genuine place where, as a young fan, I started watching wrestling in 1998, just for so you know, Andrew. And WCW went out when I was 7 years old. 2001, they folded to WWE. And over these past 19 years or so, I've been told about, okay, Ring of Honor is going to bring back that vibe from WCW. I heard TNA is going to bring that vibe back from WCW. Here we are now with AEW. And for me, I need to be shown more to actually buy that this is an alternative and real competition's back.
I think it is. I think it is. I don't mean to cut you off. I think it is an alternative. I definitely think than WWE. If we're talking Raw and SmackDown, it's completely different. NXT has a grittier feel, but it's also different than NXT. I enjoy AEW's programming. I don't want anybody to think I don't, because I do. I think it's very, very good. And I think it appeals to a certain demographic, and it always will. But I just, again, I agree with you where I think NXT, the show seems to go faster than AEW's Wednesday night show.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the big overall business measuring thing. Like, yes, obviously from a product standpoint, it's a totally different thing. But I feel like a lot of times they're misleading their audience, and especially when you have the promoter and booker the show touting out ratings, and we get to dangerous territory, especially in our field where we can't separate a subjective opinion on a show to what is. You know, I always see these headlines about, oh my God, AEW just dominates NXT. Okay, numbers wise, they dominate them, but as an overall show, can I really say that every single week objectively? That's subjective.
Right. I think AEW is the cool brand right now, whereas NXT was that cool brand 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, I remember going to the Barclays Center for the SummerSlam takeovers, and it was packed, full of passionate people. And I think passionate fans. And I think what has happened now is that, let's just say 10-15% of those NXT fans went over to AEW because it's the cool brand.
Yeah, it's the cool brand that doesn't have an identity, though. That's a problem.
Yeah, at times.
Rico, since we're talking about AEW last night, I want to get your thoughts on this. Has been like a recent complaint recently about referees being made to look bad. I know Jimmy Corderas has mentioned this over the last couple of weeks on his Twitter account. I noticed this a lot with breaking down the matches. I am not going to discredit what the athletes do for their speed and the fact that they want action to bring that energy out of the crowd. But there also is a time where you need to balance doing moves and telling the story and getting yourself over the process. You can hear JR snickering in the background when tag outs don't make sense. Like I mentioned, referees out of position. One thing in wrestling I don't understand, it's so weird to me. I remember Jimmy Corderas say this is illegal. Okay, let's talk about it. It's like a 6-man tag match, right? Mm-hmm. You bring somebody to the corner, a guy goes 1, 2. Like I put out, you said scripted, I put a simultaneous tag.
Right.
You're not supposed to do that shit.
Right.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It's really hard to say like you have the best tag team division in the world when all your match layouts are the same and you're not even following the rules. It's hard. And that's the thing. We put WWE on the standard for trying to have good storylines and them being the entertainment company. Why don't we do it for AEW when they say, oh, we're a sports-based sports-based company, but we don't follow the rules and we don't even adhere to our power rankings. Like, for me, a big issue, Andrew, I want to get your thoughts on this, is double standards in the coverage of what we see.
Well, you're going to see that no matter what type of industry you're in. Somebody who covers, the Jets and the Giants, for instance, or we could just use your Chicago teams, the Blackhawks, or excuse me, the Cubs and the White Sox.
Right.
Somebody's going to be, when a free agent hits, there's going to be, coverage where no, the White Sox can afford him more than the Cubs can. Why would he want to go to the South side and we can go to the East side, all that other stuff at the North side. And it's very biased, and that's what it's everyone's appetite, and it's whatever they, their taste is. Mm-hmm. I look at it from a perspective of what's entertaining me more. And I was always watching AEW Wednesday night because that was what was popular, and I wanted to see this new brand. And I watch it now on DVR, and it's still a very good brand, but the bias coverage is out of control. I watch a lot of people who have a ton of followers, and they, will sit back and be like, Bill Goldberg's in the middle of the ring, I'm turning the channel. But Sting, there's no problem with Sting. Now, I am all for Sting and Bill Goldberg cashing checks. Cash as many checks as you can, because your time will come and your time will go in this industry. Yes. But if you're going to call it, you better call it right down the middle. And my problem with a lot of wrestling media or personalities, like I said, the majority of the media does a pretty damn good job. But there are some people in this industry who will sit back and bitch about Goldberg, but then don't have a word to say about Sting. That doesn't make any sense.
It does not make any sense. Let me get your thoughts on this as a fan. Do you feel like commentary is at its lowest point as far as quality, just throughout the industry? I'm not talking about one particular company. Do you think it's better in some promotions than others? What do you think about that?
I think Excalibur is so underrated, so underrated. I think he could literally jump to WWE, wherever the hell he wanted to go, tomorrow. I think Jericho on the mic is gold as well. On the commentary booth, he's very good at playing that 80s, 90s Jerry the King Lawler. I love Ross and I love Shivani, but at times, they've been doing this for so many years. But right. Shivani does a very good job, and Ross, in my opinion, Jim Ross is the GOAT. But I do think that the Raw commentary team is lackluster at times. I love Samoa Joe. I love Byron and Tom are okay. And that's not a knock on them. It's just, they have I know the announcers at WWE, they have a lot of things being fed to them with their earpieces, and it's probably a job that nobody wants. So I don't really want to crap on anybody. The NXT commentary team, I love Vic. I love Beth. Not a huge fan of Stu. That's just me. SmackDown's A1. I mean, you get Corey Graves and Michael Cole. Michael Cole is so good.
He's underrated for what he's done as his whole body of work. You brought up Excalibur. On Dynamite, sometimes he's hit and miss with me, but I get to cover the marathon, the wrestling marathon that I like to call, known as AEW Dark, that goes on for 2.5 hours every week.
How is covering Dark?
I never want to hear somebody tell me that I hate AEW, because to sit through that show that takes me almost 3.5 hours to write down with 16 matches, it's not easy, and you really have to enjoy the brand to go through that.
Bless you, man.
Yeah, I also noticed the chemistry that him and Taz have on commentary on Dark. It's way much better than what it is on Dynamite, at least in my opinion.
Taz is gold, dude. Absolutely gold.
T-Taz is one of my favorite parts of AEW. Speaking of good commentary teams, I recommend this. I know it's a niche product and people don't really get the time to watch this a lot. Go check out NXT UK with Andy Shepherd and Nigel McGuinness. I think they do a really good, old school vibe of pro wrestling.
I think Nigel's stuck in the UK, because otherwise I think he'd be commentating on NXT right now. That's just because Nigel was great on NXT. A lot of people, Mauro Ranallo wasn't a lot of people's cup of tea, but I enjoyed Mauro for what he did. He had brought a lot of passion.
Yeah, I'd rather have energy than fake passive-aggressive Josh Matthews on commentary.
Oh, God, please don't even get me started. I texted a buddy of mine who works for Impact, and I was just like, you guys need to find a new – and he just – I don't know if he was doing it on purpose, but he just sounded like he was so unenthused.
I met the guy in person. Not much to write home about, but let's move on really quick. We got the Royal Rumble coming up this weekend. I'm very excited for that. This is going to be my 7th Rumble that I covered, and I think last year's was so special in the men's match for what it represented in the story they told in the match. It made me want to be one of the best Rumble matches of all time. I'm very intrigued with how they're going to present this Rumble match, both of them. I really think this is going to bring this full circle as we were just talking about announcers and commentary. I think they need to be in their A game to bring the energy of what this Rumble match is going to be. They're going all out. This is not a 20-man Royal Rumble. They're doing the whole ring of a thing, right? And I'm really curious to see how this plans out. But we also have good matches on the card, too, to look forward to. You mentioned Drew McIntyre, Goldberg earlier. I'm really intrigued by Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens in the last man standing match. I think the Tribal Chief is doing one of the best angles in pro wrestling right now as we currently speak. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I think this may be the good year where maybe a title match gets to close out the pay-per-view as opposed to the Rumble match. What do you think about that?
I think it's not a bad idea solely because there's no fans. So realistically, the Rumble's not going to have that normal pop. And I think you're spot on with the announcers. I think if they were to, they need to line themselves up with 3 or 4 A1 announcers. So I would have, I'd have Corey, I'd have Michael Cole, I'd have probably Samoa Joe, and then I'd bring in the King. I'd have Jerry Lawler because, and I know a lot of people say that Jerry's past his prime. No, he's not. In small doses, Jerry's great. And the Rumble just fits him. So that's what I would do. And I think you're going to need that. I'm very pleased that they didn't have Edge as a surprise, or, like a surprise return. The organic feel and the natural pop and everything that happened last year should live by itself forever. It was a 9-year odyssey that came to a head, and it's a great story. I don't want to see that beaten into the ground, and I'm happy they announced Edge. I don't know if the Rumble's not going to close, whether it be men or women, because I do think there are going to be some surprises and some good ones. I don't know if your boy Punk is, and he's my boy too. I don't know if CM Punk is going to be one of those people. I just can't see it. But if he does, great. It's always every year we have is Punk coming back at the Royal Rumble? I just don't see it. But I think that the title match is the one that intrigues me the most is Goldberg and Goldberg and Drew, because we don't know who's going to win. And that's what they're doing. They're suspending this is, because let's just call it what it is. Kevin Owens is not beating Roman Reigns. Nobody's beating Roman Reigns.
No.
So, and if they do that, then that would be jaw-dropping and shocking. But we know a week or a month later, that title's going right back on Roman. So I think the one match that I'm looking forward to the most, besides the 2 Rumble matches, my favorite event of the year, is the Goldberg and Drew McIntyre solely because I don't know who's going to win.
You just hit a great point right there. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm intrigued by this entire pay-per-view as a whole, because honestly, and I just recorded my podcast about 2 hours ago. I was thinking about just looking at the playing field for both men's and women's Rumble matches. I can't tell you this one person has to win or this person better not win. Like, I have no idea, and I'm happy about that. I don't need to go into a Rumble like we do the last 4 or 5 years. Like, oh, okay, this is a shoe-in. This guy's going to fight so-and-so at WrestleMania.
What do you think of the backstage stuff on FS1 that they're going to announce 1 and 2 for the women and 30 for the men? Do you think that's brutal, or you think this is the time to do it?
I think it's the time to do it because fans are not there.
True.
The surprise element this year is just not going to be there with the fact that virtual screens. And there's only so much you can measure general reactions just off of Twitter.
Yeah, and if Seth Rollins they announces that number 30, then I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I'm waiting for that 30th. He could win it. I'm going to watch. And then if they announce 2 people who are in a feud for the women at 1 and 2, a la Bianca Belair and Bayley, I think it intrigues a lot of people too. So I hate it. I hate the fact that they're announcing pick or where the entrants are going to come out. But like you said, I think this is the year to do it.
Yeah, this whole pandemic era is like, you can't just go off of book and show pretend that 20,000 people are there. They're just not. And I give all these promotions credit for the fact that they have tried things out of the box and not try to be status quo, whether cinematic matches or making decisions that maybe wouldn't work at at the Barclays Center or the Rosemont Horizon. Take a risk. And I think more and more promotions have better credibility if they're not peer pressure into making decisions.
Well,
stay on your sword. But
so that's a good question that you bring up, or a good statement. And I want, I know this is your show, but I want to ask you a couple questions as well. Thunderdome, do you think it's run its course?
It has in the way it's presented.
Do you like the fact that they're not following AEW's lead into like just having 1,000 people at some amphitheater?
Yes, and for me, I don't like the fact that the AEW's ringside area looks like a tailgate session.
I do enjoy that because they can't have the fans ringside because of the 6 feet, and the fans. We don't know if the fans are tested or not. We know they don't run a sloppy shop, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it's an element. It's run its course. I like that the heels and the faces are on the other side. But the Thunderdome was super expensive, but I also like the fact that that WWE's not following suit and just copying everything AEW did. Because if you remember, and I know you do, because you're a student of the game, they copied AEW's camera angle when they were at the warehouse because it was the best camera angle to have.
So, yeah, the AEW copied off of Ring of Honor too, and then,
right.
So
see, look at it, he knows.
I agree. I think with the Thunderdome, I love the aesthetics of it. I just like what they put into it. Even like some people call it corny, but like the little lightning balls they do at the beginning of the show, like that little graphic before we hear the ACD song. I think that's cool.
Yeah,
but
I've never been in the Thunderdome, and I never will.
Yeah, none of us will, unfortunately. I'm sure you probably have some good ideas as far as like predictions are concerned. Is there any like 3 people for either men or women's matches you think had the best chance to win on Sunday?
So I'm not trying to sound like Dave Chappelle, but for the women, it's Bianca Belair, and Bianca Belair. I mean, awesome. She's got to have the coming out party. She's got to have a bunch of eliminations. She's got to win it. I wouldn't mind Bayley, and if they go back to Sasha and Bayley, so be it. I think Bayley is, if not the best women's wrestler in the WWE right now. Her and Bianca Belair and Sasha and Charlotte Flair, they're all right in that nut there, and I think that. Bayley's doing some of the best work she's ever done with her heel persona. So I wouldn't mind that at all, but it's got to be Bianca Belair for me, for the women's. If not, then I want to see Bayley.
If Bayley can revise the player haters ball, she'll be my favorite women's wrestler ever.
There you go.
About Chappelle's skits.
There you go. I like that.
I don't even know you and I hate you.
So who do you think for 3 women?
Rhea Ripley is on my list because
she's got to show up, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a good comeback story in a way that maybe Charlotte finds her way back to having the Raw Women's title, and we can actually do what we're supposed to do last year, and Rhea Ripley brings down the Queen. So that's one that stands out the most to me.
It's interesting you bring that up because there's a Raw Women's Tag Team title match at the Royal Rumble. Now, if I would love to see Rhea cost Asuka and Charlotte the tag titles, then Charlotte's in the Rumble, Rhea shows up in the Rumble, and maybe Charlotte throws Rhea Ripley over the ropes or costs Charlotte the victory again. Boom, you have a match for Elimination Chamber and Fastlane, and then you can have the whole Asuka and Charlotte Flair at Mania because it writes itself, Yeah,
it really does. Other options as far as women are concerned, I do agree with you with Bayley. I think it's kind of early for Bianca Belair. Just kind of it's early for Big E. Like next year, it would be a shoo-in for Big E to win the men's Rumble match, in my opinion. Bianca, I loved her Chronicle special that just came out the other day on the network. I thought that was really good. If you guys haven't seen it, please go check it out. So for me, it's Rhea Ripley, Bayley, and then the third one. I don't know. I haven't heard any rumors. I don't have sources.
I mean, you're going to say Ronda.
I don't have sources here, but I have a feeling that Ronda Rousey might be the surprise for WWE this weekend.
I don't know. Do you bring Ronda? I'm under the impression if I'm running the company, if I have the pen or pencil for the Royal Rumble, I'm not wasting Ronda or Brock on this Rumble because they're attractions.
That's a good point. Would you bring in John Cena?
Yes.
That's interesting, at least from like an attraction point of view.
Well, John's a huge attraction. Don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to see John at WrestleMania. Now, I think that if you're going to bring back Brock only needs a month. You could bring him back at the Fastlane pay-per-view. I think that's what they're calling it, right? That's going to be exclusively on Peacock. And I think that's when you bring back one of these guys, whether it be Brock or Ronda. And Ronda could fit in just fine on Peacock on Fastlane. But I don't know if you do that with the Rumble, because if you go to my Twitter, I also, which is at Andrew Baydala, I put out a tweet with some dates, and you'll have to decode them yourselves for all of you watching this, because I'm not going to tell you what they mean. But they're going to have to get out of that Thunderdome eventually, because the Rays need that field for their home games, and they need to practice. So where are they headed? They can't go to the Amalie Arena. They can't go to any of these basketball or hockey arenas because they're in full season. So they're going to have to go somewhere. And it's not the Performance Center. Trust me. They'll never go back there unless they have to. So,
yeah, and they're not good. XFL's not coming back, so maybe you can do Raymond James Stadium every week if you
Good luck.
Good luck, yeah. That's the thing. I'm very curious on what decisions or surprises they would hold back until the fans come back. That's something that you have to have in the back of your head when it comes to these shows. You just don't know what decisions, how changes could happen, what moments you could actually have.
And you got to remember, NBC's paid $1 billion to lease the network and their content and their upcoming pay-per-views. Right. And NBC might say, I want you to fully load WrestleMania for this year, because they're not charging anything extra for WrestleMania this year yet. And I don't think they will. I think that's further down the line to get a return on their investment, them being NBCU. But I think they're going to stack WrestleMania this year. I really do. I don't think you're going to get The Rock. He does have a new show on NBC, but I just don't think it's right yet. But we'll have to wait and see.
Last thing I want to talk about with you today, my friend, is WrestleMania. I was going to go down there and cover an event last year. Obviously, things went the way they were. But they are bringing it back to Raymond James Stadium. My question, the last thing we're talking about here, what's your thoughts on the two-night concept of WrestleMania? And what is one box office match that you'd like to see at that show? Because I know my pick would be John Cena versus Roman Reigns. That would be my pick.
I think that's a great pick. I think it's definitely box office. I think it's also beautiful because John's going to do the job. If you want to talk wrestling terms, John's going to lose to Roman, and it just solidifies Roman. I think they wanted to go Goldberg and Roman, but they realized they have another year left on Goldberg's contract. And if you shoot Goldberg, his character, in the head by getting obliterated by Roman, and what do you do with Goldberg next year? You can't trot him out and have him face somebody for the title. He just got beat by Roman and got crushed. I think that's something maybe you see at WrestleMania. What are we at, 37? Maybe at WrestleMania 38. Maybe Goldberg takes on somebody, Roman, at 38 in Dallas. WrestleMania, an attraction that I want to see. What do I think? I'll start with the two nights. I think the two nights is done solely for an attendance so that they can tout 60, 70,000 people. I don't think WrestleMania, from a fan's perspective and from somebody who has to sit through 8 hours in one night, I love two nights because it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I'll come back the next night, no problem.
Yeah.
Because the 8 hours at times is daunting, and whether I have to get up to go to the bathroom when I'm at the thing, or I need to get on the food and beverage line for whatever I'm drinking that night, it's a pain in the ass. So and 8 hours is a long time to watch wrestling. And there was talks that, the WWE wanted to do 12 hours, and it's just like, no. So I appreciate the 2 days, but I think it's solely because they want to tout attendance. And I think that's smart because they can't have 60,000 people in one building right now. In Florida, you can pretty much do whatever you want. But I think they're trying to toe that company line, and they're trying to toe the what's right and what's wrong. So I think 30,000 each night, 35,000 each night is the right way to go. And I think that's what they're going to do. I don't think it's the way WWE and WrestleMania is going to be going forward. I think they're solely doing it for these 2 years because of the situations that we're in the world. An attraction, man. I think that we're going to see Randy and Goldberg. I do think that's going to happen if we don't see a three-way between Goldberg and, Drew and somebody else. Right. I love Cena and Roman, but I wouldn't be surprised if you got, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Becky Lynch is going to be at this year's WrestleMania. A lot of people think I'm nuts, but she's a mom. And from somebody who has 3 kids, and that Cody Rhodes segment on Dynamite was absolutely beautiful. And Cody should relish those moments. I love that he got emotional. There's more to come. Trust me on that, Cody, with your kids. But I think Becky's going to stay home. So an attraction match, if I had to pick one that's going to lure people in, I'm going to say Lesnar and Keith Lee, or Lesnar and Lashley, because it's somebody who Brock Lesnar's box office, and it's somebody who could use the match, that being Lashley or Lee.
I love the fact that you brought up Bobby Lashley because the Hurt Business, in my opinion, is the best group for the TV shows that I watched throughout the week.
Would you be mad if he wins the Rumble?
Lashley?
Yeah.
No, not one bit.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't think that Drew McIntyre is walking into WrestleMania as a champion. Maybe that's a hot take or something. And it's not about Goldberg. I do have a sneaky suspicion that Miz is going to go all the way and cash it on Sunday. That's where I'm standing. I could be totally wrong on that, but that's where I think.
You think Miz is walking into that Mania as champion?
I think Miz holds it for. It's going to look like a hot potato situation, but I think that Drew beats Goldberg.
Okay.
Miz cashes in. Miz loses to Brock Lesnar. And then Bobby Lashley is still your winner for the Rumble if that's how they want to go.
Interesting. I think the Miz could 100%. First of all, I said this since SummerSlam, I think it was, or after SummerSlam. They need to take that briefcase off the Miz before WrestleMania. Yeah. And I wanted it off before the Rumble because I feel like the Rumble winner should stand alone. There shouldn't be that Money in the Bank briefcase guy behind him. Now, they did do this with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 31, and it made for a really, really good moment because we've never seen it. But I also don't want to see it again. And history's doomed to repeat itself. But another attraction match that I just thought of would be Triple H and AJ Styles.
Oh, man. Great minds think alike. That was the AJ Styles match I had, besides possibly revising with Samoa Joe with different roles. Samoa Joe was unable to get his hands on Seth Rollins for whatever reason last year when he was talking crap to him. AJ, being butthurt about not winning the Rumble, could lash out at Joe. I think that'd be a great option. But Triple H, if Triple H could have one more match at WrestleMania, or how many it's going to be, I would love to see him and AJ Styles. That'd be a great match.
Yeah, they're going to stack this year's Mania. They have to. And I know Taker's retired, but one phone call could change all of that. And maybe it's next year in Dallas. And I don't need any more Undertaker matches, but that's an attraction too. So
that's my two goats will come back in Dallas, CM Punk and The Undertaker.
There you go.
Please watch. All right, Drew, before we head off, I just want to say thank you for being a good brother, reaching out over the last couple weeks. It's been nice getting to get to know you. The fact that we got to record shows even better, and I hope we can do this much, much more often in the future. Please tell everybody where they can find you and your wonderful work on the SNE Network.
So my Twitter is at Andrew Baydala. My name is right there, and then you could just put the @ in front of it. And please follow us, like, subscribe, and follow at SNE Network. That's SNE, Sam, Nancy, Edward Network. And man, I appreciate you having me on here. Thank you. I do enjoy your work. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good fight. And those transcripts are fantastic. So thank you very much for those.
I appreciate you. Fun fact for those who don't know, the longest wrestling show I covered outside of Wrestle Kingdom was WrestleMania 32, 10 hours.
Holy moly.
But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for checking out this special bonus edition of the Hoots Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast right now on Apple Podcasts. It comes to you free of charge. We don't charge you anything to check out the podcast. It's a great source of positive mental attitude and some levity, some comedy, and we talk some wrestling as well. Make sure to get it on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Drew just mentioned ProWrestlingTranscriptions.com, and I'll be back here next week to recap the Royal Rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, the road to WrestleMania is here. It may not feel like it yet because we're still in the year that doesn't exist, in my opinion. But but nonetheless, for Andrew, I'm Joshy. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Enjoy the Rumble. I'll talk to you guys next week. Yes, sir.